little bit because you help out with some organizations in our community. You
Yes.
are involved with both the Lyme Summer Theater Institute and the Clayton Youth Theater Week,
Yes.
which I personally love as a musician. So, the Lyme Summer Theater Institute, what is your role with that? I know they've performed some shows in the past. I know, obviously, with COVID and the pandemic, that recently nothing has happened, but they've done Music Man Jr., Willy Wonka Jr. So, how long have you been involved with this organization and what's your role?
So this is a horrible answer, but even counting backward, I can't remember how many years we've been doing this. I think for Lyme, if you take out the COVID year, I think we had done 3 shows. So that would have been our fourth, meaning this would have been our fifth. Um, but that program was born essentially out of a conversation that a school administrator, who also happens to be a theater person, had with myself and another theater person who does children's youth theater, and they looked for a grant because they wanted it to be free, and it is one of the only free summer theater offerings for children in our area. And although I run the administrative end of it, I'll be the one sitting at the check-in desk. I'll be the one who is writing up the programs. My real role in that is the backstage stuff. So as much as the storyteller in me loves the story of the show, I enjoy helping and creating all of those pieces that pull it together behind spoken word and behind the music. And so there are other people who are more well suited. I spent years and years as the director of the middle school musicals at South Louis, where I teach. And so, that kind of directing and producing piece of it for me just comes from the love of teaching these kids how to tell a story. And so there's stage movement involved, and I let someone else take care of that. And there's singing involved, I let someone else take care of that. And don't ask me to choreograph a dance. But we work together. So I might help with emotionality, or what does someone's face look like when they're sad? What hand motions might you use if you're extremely nervous? Those kinds of things. And then the backstage pieces, which is where I grew up in musical theater. I learned the tech piece of lighting and sound at a really young age. And those are, all that backstage stuff that you don't really see make a show possible. We call it the magic that you don't see. Those are the things that I have a hand in when it comes to the actual show day. But on the front end of that, my job is to find kids who want to be up on stage or maybe don't want to be up on stage, and get them to sign up and show up and make sure they have a really good time so that they want to come back the next year.
I think it's really neat to see how all of the performing arts are really interwoven. So your role as a storyteller and helping those kids that are on stage trying to show and display the story for the audience, it's just all interwoven with everything else. And it's something that we don't
Absolutely.
yeah, we don't necessarily just pinpoint and say this is storytelling. We usually just group it under the big, umbrella of theater, but really it's so much more than that. There's so much more diversity with the performing arts, which is really just amazing. I
Absolutely. And yes, and that's one of the things that I think we in our area are getting really good at seeing. I remember being in middle school and going into high school and doing musical theater because it was the only theater that was available. Even knowing that music wasn't my passion, it was the only thing that I had. And so I think that over the past, several decades, we've gotten really good at pinpointing kids who are musical versus kids who are storytellers, those kinds of things, and helping them to find places where they can practice that. And that's why it was important for both of our youth theater programs that we start working with kids who wanted to be backstage, because not only are the arts interwoven, but without all of those pieces being interwoven, there is no theater. And I think that's one thing we've learned over the pandemic, is that we need the arts and we need theater. And sometimes you get to a point where it doesn't really matter what that looks like. So yeah, I wish I had known about improv when I was in high school. I probably would have been a much happier high school student and much less angsty. And my mom would have appreciated that if I had known that improv existed, but I didn't. So I think in our area we're trying to do a good job bringing those pieces in for kids who will benefit from them.
Do you know if there's any hope for anything coming out of Lyme Summer Theater Institute for this coming summer?
So there's no official word, but that hasn't stopped us from being forward thinking and planning. There are definitely ways that we can be on stage and we can be safe. So we have started looking at shows and ordering music and thinking about what a socially distanced show on the stage might look like. How many kids can we put in the space? So we really are trying to be preemptive so that if we're given the go, we are ready and everyone is safe, but also has a fantastic time. I think that our students have grown accustomed, maybe through some of the rules at school, with 2 masks and hand sanitizing and all of that. So, this could just be an extension of what they do during the regular school year. Because we use the school, we needed the school to be open, which that didn't happen at the end of the school year and over the summer. So I think all the key pieces are in place, and we're keeping a really close eye on the state fair. If the state fair can go ahead, then I think we have a good chance of being able to do some children's theater this summer in our area.
Now, Lyme Summer Theater Institute, they have a Facebook page, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I actually think it's called that, Lyme Summer Theater Institute. And I answer the messages if you message the page. We also have an email address that we use to do all the registration forms and things. And we will post updates on that page. So if you're interested, you can go there and just follow that page and we'll post updates for that. And that is one of the ways that we are able to communicate with the families in our area. But if someone doesn't have Facebook, all they have to do is email us and we can keep them in the loop that way. We send out kind of mass emails when we've decided what the show is and when the dates will be. And so if you're on the list, you get all of those, and that's another way that you can definitely be sure to stay in the loop.
Great. And the Clayton Youth Theater Week, how is that different than what you produce with the Lyme Summer Theater Institute? Now, I'm assuming this is more of learning some technique.
Yes. So the Clayton Theater Week has been around substantially longer. I think we were counting 20 plus years at this point, and it is its own standalone not for profit. So that program runs a little bit differently. That one happens to be the only theater program in our area currently that uses an actual theater. We use the Clayton Opera House for the performance. And so we were very lucky. That's a historic building that just hundreds of famous people have performed in. I've seen so many shows there. So that's a nice piece to the program itself, but it does run slightly differently. There are auditions ahead of time, parts are doled out, kids are expected to learn them ahead of time. And then when they come together, the show is performed in parts, and there are some points at which students are divided into groups based on age for the performance. So the demographic piece, or excuse me, I'm going to change that. He can chop that out. The logistical piece of that is a little bit different. It looks just a little bit different, but it has some more staff and some more directors. And so there is definitely singing technique, dancing technique, acting technique that's involved in that show. And that show does have a bigger contingent of students who work kind of the tech stuff. So we've started to incorporate that into both programs, and learning to use microphones, learning to run the lighting, painting flats, those kinds of things happen at both programs. We do just have the ability at the Clayton program to accept more students because there are more adults involved.
And what would be the age range for students? How young can students join if they're interested?
So for both programs, you just have to be eligible to enter kindergarten. You don't have to have attended kindergarten. No, you just so you have to be 5. So one program is July, one program is in August. So I think if you, let me think, if you are going to be 5 by September, maybe, then you are eligible. We have had students come at 4 years old and have a blast, and we've had students come at 4 years old, and the second day, mom says they don't want to get out of the car, so we're not going to complete the week. They are both week-long programs. So we do at both places, we break the kids into groups by age, for safety reasons, but also because they have similar behaviors, and they are able to sing in a similar fashion or remember a certain amount of choreography steps, and which is all way more than I can remember. So, yep. So they both go from about 5 to 18. And that upper end, it looks a little bit different in each group. So that upper end in Clayton, they perform the entire show. They do in a week. And at the Lime show, those older kids are incorporated with the rest of the students in the rest of the show because our numbers are lower. So we just need them to take on some of those lead roles. Essentially, if you're 16, you're going to play an adult. It is kind of how youth theater works, no matter where you are.
Yeah. So we will definitely put the links to both of those Facebook pages so you can find Lime Summer Theater Institute and the Clayton Youth Theater Week both off of our Harmony website.
Yes.
And we'll put it right on our Artist Spotlight blog. So you can find all of that information underneath all of Tanya's information on our blog post.
So my Christmas story starts much like any other Christmas story with an unplanned, impromptu, and overly expensive purchase. My children are grown now, but the year that they were 4 and 7, I got an email in November that the Rockettes tickets would be going on sale as a special Black Friday sale. And I always had this picture in my head that I would take my children to New York City for Christmas. We would see the Rockettes, we would skate at Rockefeller Center, and it would be wonderful. So without too much thought, my best friend and I decided that we would buy the tickets and take my kids to New York City in December that year. Because I had this picture in my head, I saw my children in these wool plaid dresses with matching hats and mittens and wool tights and their little boots. And so I started scouring thrift stores to see if I could find the dresses, which I did. However, I forgot that children and wool don't really go together. And so on the day of the trip, I dressed my girls and loaded them into the car. The weather was beautiful. And the only problem was that my 7-year-old sat in the back itching and complaining about the wool dress. So we're driving on 90 toward New York City. And all of a sudden, with the complaining in the back seat, I hear this kind of choking, watery sound. And after a few seconds, it is joined by a cacophony of crying and screams. And if you haven't figured out already, when I looked in the rearview mirror, my 4-year-old was vomiting all over herself from what we would eventually discover was horrible car sickness that she is plagued with till this day. So I pull over on the side of the road. It's I-90. It's snowed. Cars are going by. The slush is splashing. And I go to take her out of the car seat. And if you've ever had a child's coat, one of those easy to clean coats, they're very slippery. And so I go to take her out of the car seat. And this was a particularly slimy form of vomit. And so it just kind of slid down the front of her jacket, down onto the dress, and onto the car seat. Because she was 4, we didn't carry a diaper bag anymore, which in hindsight was a terrible idea. And so we scoured the car and we came up with 2 things that we thought could help. A handful of fast food napkins shoved in the glove compartment and a can of leftover carpet cleaner. So we cleaned off the front of her coat with the napkins, which worked pretty well. And then we took the coat off her, and my best friend held her on the side of the road, kind of like this. And I covered her face and sprayed her with the carpet cleaner. And the can had one of those like scrubby heads. So that worked really well. As far as the car seat, if you're ever driving down I-90 toward the east and you see a car seat on the side of the road, just leave it there because I guarantee it probably smells really bad by now. So we get to New York and we see the Rockettes and it is magical. My children watching it snow indoors is one of their favorite holiday memories. And me getting to watch my children watch it snow indoors will always be one of my favorite holiday memories. So we leave the Rockettes and we go to get the skates out of the car in the parking garage. And I say to my children, stand right here and behave. I'm just going to get the skates out of the trunk of the car, which of course they did not. And so my 7-year-old tortures my 4-year-old and the 4-year-old runs away and trips in this concrete parking garage over a concrete curb. And now there's screaming and crying and blood. So we clean up the blood with the napkins in some spit. And the cut's not too bad. It's just her teeth through her lip. So we go to skate at Rockefeller Center and I really wanted a picture. And so I keep slapping my daughter's hand as she's itching the dress because I wanted a picture. And I got a picture, but it was not a picture that I could use for my Christmas card because while my children are in their beautiful dresses in front of the Rockefeller Center tree with the snow, which is good, my other daughter has her hand down her tights scratching, which is bad. And my daughter's lip had started to bleed and she had smeared it with her fist and her lip was swollen to the point where it was endangering her ability to breathe through her nose. So I have a picture. It is both good and bad and ugly. Thank you.